easier way.
That's easier than actually trying to hack their signal.
I wouldn't do that.
We're not recommending that.
I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying.
We're not even like mildly suggesting that.
No.
We're like saying don't do that.
This is, in a simplified version, as with most
all our science.
This is very, very simplified.
The science of thinking science.
I will start with the fact that, without a doubt, what was done, according to the government, was against the law of broadcast interruption. According to... this name is terrible. 18 U.S. Code 1367, which was enacted in 1986, had put an addition in that said that satellite jamming was a crime. Technically, this is satellite jamming, so this was definitely a crime, according to the government. But they could never track down who did it. The FCC had looked into it, and they're kind of, it seems like, the ones who deal with this. But that's why it was a crime. But this is how you do it.
So we're just going to go ahead and say, disclaimer, we're saying it's a crime, it's still a crime, we're going to tell you how to do it, but we're not saying do it.
Well, we're not
you can't
really...
do it anymore.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Everybody uses a digital signal now.
Right, so that's what we're saying.
And this is how somebody would hack an analog television signal.
Okay.
So if you had, you had the big metal antenna on top of your house, and that's how you got TV forever until about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Well, it was an analog signal,
okay.
And they stopped analog. So you can't do this method anymore.
All right, so disclaimer.
But don't try it anyway.
You can't do it. You can't do it.
And besides which, actually, we're going to slip in some disinformation, and we're going to be kind of vague about the whole thing. So, you're not really going to be able to use our information.
Steve's science isn't really that good.
Oh, no, Steve's science is terrible and inaccurate, and half of it's made up. Okay. To spread their signals across the city, what a local TV network would do is they would first relay their signal from the studio to a high-powered transmitter that was on top of a tall building or a skyscraper. And that connection between those two places, between the TV station and the transmitter, is actually where the weak spot is at. So that's the weak link in the process, which is what somebody who was going to do a broadcast interruption would... Well,
that's where they would have
That's what they would capitalize on. That's where they would strike. To interrupt the signal, it was really, really simple. All you had to do was you had to have transmission equipment of your own, and you had to be vertically at a high enough location, and people say that this would be on the roof of a building or some kind of high-rise or something like that, in between the studio and the transmitter.
Were they not typically on top of the studio? Like, was that not...
No, they were not always in the same location.
Okay.
So the studio was in one place, but the transmitter was on top of a big, tall building with lots of strong equipment to spread it around.
Okay.
So yes, it is two different places.
Okay.
So you get in between the two, and according to the research, people think that in this particular instance, that means that it was somewhere between north or the northwest sides of Chicago. And from there, all you had to do was identify the skyscraper that had the transmitter on it and blast it with a high-powered microwave signal of your own.
Yeah, and it doesn't even need to be that high-powered. It just needs to be a little more high-powered.
Just needs to be strong enough than the studio signal.
Yeah, a little stronger than that, and you're golden.
And they were so far away. I'm sorry. So, okay, not only were they, not right next to each other, but they were so far away that you could say, I don't know, it was like the northwest side of Chicago.
Are you talking about the two different transmitters that were hacked? Yeah.
I think that... So there's a great map out there, and I looked at it, and I want to say that they were only like a quarter to a half a mile apart. It wasn't a huge distance.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. I mean,
it's big when that's the only thing that's keeping you from being hacked.
But hacking wasn't that big of a thing.
That's fair.
So that's one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, different times.
Yeah, very different time. So as Joe said, you didn't have to have a hugely strong signal. You just had to be strong enough to override what was coming from the studio.
Okay.
And people could do this relatively inexpensively on their own. And the brand new equipment for TV stations costs at the time was tens of thousands of dollars.
Sure.
But you could get older equipment secondhand at an affordable price for a ham radio guy or somebody who's into that, an enthusiast. It wasn't a huge cost. And you didn't need a massive satellite dish. You know, DirecTV, those silly little dishes that people put on their houses? That's all the big of a dish you would have needed to use to broadcast at that transmitter to bust in.
Okay.
The first signal interruption that we talked about, which was at WGN at the sports news section, that only lasted that 10-20-second time frame, because as soon as Dan Roan got interrupted and the screen went black and then Max came on, one of their engineers was pretty quick on his feet, and he changed their frequency so that they were transmitting at a different frequency. The transmitter knew suddenly it should be getting this other frequency, so it ignored the interrupted signal. So that's why that one was so very short. For WTW, Channel 11,
somebody was asleep at the switch.
Somebody evidently was asleep at the switch. Not so fast. So that's why that one went on so long. But as I was saying earlier to you, Devin, this wasn't the first broadcast interruption.
Okay.
If we look at...
Actually, if we look at the wiki page, there's a lot of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I only want to call out a couple of them that I found fun or kind of humorous.
Sure.
We've got April 22nd, 1986, a guy by the name of John McDougal jammed HBO signal. If you're from that era, you will remember the color bar screen. That meant that something was wrong or the station was off the air. And what he did is he presented that color bar with lines of text on top of it. And the text read, "Good evening, HBO, from Captain Midnight. $12.95 a month? No way. Showtime Movie Channel, beware." And that sat there for minutes.
Yeah, although he didn't use a radio jammer. My understanding is he was working at a satellite uplink location, and he just switched the satellite. He just basically rotated the dish over to the
Yeah, he worked with satellites. He also got busted, obviously. He got fined, and he got like a year or so's probation. It's amazing how they figure out who did it, because he used some unusual text encoder to make the text that was on the screen.
Yeah, so they figured it out.
And that's how they figured it out, and that's how they busted this guy.
Yeah, and then there was another guy who got busted just because he was shooting his mouth off, and he would have gotten away with it. I can't remember which guy that was.
That one I don't know, but the other one I want to talk about, which I find a little humorous, based on what it is and who got it, is September 1987. A gentleman by the name of Thomas Haney, I believe is how you pronounce it. He interrupted Playboy TV signal with text messages telling viewers to repent and find Jesus.
It's funny, the one that comes to mind for me is the one where, it was some very young children's show, and it got interrupted by porn for a couple minutes. I think, it's the exact opposite. That's well, you were just talking about.
Yeah, mine's funny. Yours is disturbing.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Well, I just remember because I was in preschool at the time.
Were you watching the show when it happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were not.
Was it hot?
No, I don't know.
It wasn't local.
I don't know.
You liar.
Sorry.
I do too.
Treat your puppy like a dog.
Okay. Let's move on. Normally, this would be the point where, in this episode, since it is sponsored by Audible, I would tell you about a book that's on Audible that's related to this story. Unfortunately, I couldn't find one, so I thought I'd tell you something.
Steve, it doesn't go with the natural flow of the podcast.
I'll turn it around. Trust me, bear with me. As you two know, but our listeners don't, this weekend I took a plane ride to the East Coast and back. It was nothing to do, going around, and I went ahead and pulled the book for their Audible.
You signed up for your free trial?
Signed up for a trial, and I listened to, I got a Neil Gaiman book. I don't know if,
they
Gaiman or
they also took over Night.
It's Gaiman, okay. And I don't know, have either of you two ever read any
and brought it back to...
I mean, yeah, Sandman.
And speaking of Spanish Galleons, there is actually
sci-fi fiction. It's fun, it's light reading, and I knew that's what I was going to watch for hours and hours on a plane. And so I got Ocean at the end of the day.
No, it is. Don't look at you like that. I know it is.
No, but it actually exists.
I get it, especially since it's narrated by him, which is
yeah, that's the whole thing. It was there was a storm in the 1930s that was partially uncovered, and people became aware of it. And
a couple of times,
there was no money to actually dig it out, and so of course it's still there. And there might be all kinds of gold in there.
His voice just kind of sounds like that. So it's really interesting. I doubt that it was the other book. Well, here's the thing: is that according to the story, the king orders these ships in 1610. Yeah, that one about aliens coming to Earth. A couple of guys, and one of them is a gentleman by the name of really interesting to Teddy Ray and Pedro Rosales. Well, he divers on them. They go up and down the coast of California and Mexico. If you guys want to download a Neil Gaiman book or Chariots of the Gods or whatever, the natives, and it turns out the natives had been taking your first and from Audible. Those are in Oysters. I suddenly couldn't think of sideways. Well, it really helps with Let's Get Into Series because I really spent an hour perusing their library before I actually downloaded something because it's 100 or 150,000 titles and growing. The app, I actually put the app on my tablet, which I gotta admit, most player apps drive me nuts. What I really like about this one is that when the tablet was asleep and I woke it up, the player was on the screen, so I could quickly and easily pause it or rewind it a little bit, which I believe in 1910 there was a kind of a waypoint, so I was really happy that was there. But if good design, it's a really good site. So I like the player a lot. But if you guys want to start that trial, again, it's audiblepodcast.com/thinking-sideways. Start your free trial, and really, it's hours of enjoyment.
Absolutely.
So, guess that doesn't really tie right back into the theory section.
I don't know. Is your next theory it's aliens?
No.
Oh, then that's nice. Then you're right.
It's mortgage.
What is your next theory?
You find tenants where you have it.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be low
specific to one person. Joe,
okay.
So people have an idea.
Not even Teddy or Neil Gaiman or anybody.
No,
unless it's Neil Gaiman with an alien.
It's about 90 miles.
Yes, it was Neil Gaiman. The first theory is that it was Neil Gaiman.
Was it 80 miles?
Okay, our first theory is that it's a guy by the name of Eric. Well, it's a thing. The whole area is Eric Fournier is responsible for the whole thing, and the reason is Fournier does because it's in Bloomers County.
That would make sense.
YouTube channel,
that area of California.
Videos where you knew as an adult
to the guy
dresses up. By the way, we're now in the pirate theory for anybody who has wears a doll's mask. He's finally cut the bottom of the mask off and duct taped it together so that when he talks, the mouth moves. That her family always points to the camera as a character called Shay St. John had been drilled into her for so long, and radically says, no matter how bad it is, voices, the pilot doesn't get off the friggin' boat because as soon as you get off the boat is similar to what now you're both traded in the
You are right.
I watched a couple of Fournier videos, these Shay St. John
look me in the eye and tell me
and
that if your wife was floundering overboard and the only option you thought
the costume is always in
jump in
kind
after
of
her,
various
you'd be like,
states of
I'm the pilot, I gotta stay on the boat.
And I got life insurance. I got life insurance on her.
I just mean, so while our reports, they're happy, they're in love, they've been together for a couple years, I would jump in after my boyfriend. And I know boater safety.
Well, the thing about it is that
and he wanted to get exposure for the band.
It's a great way to do that is not mentioning your band at all.
There were no knocks on the head. I know.
Just throwing that out. In my theory, he fell over.
Okay, I can see that. Okay, so
this is years ago, not the new videos that he's doing now. This was for the band then.
Head back towards
but his original intention was to make a video show, promoting the band, and then he was going to interrupt the signal, and he was going to put it in there so people are in Chicago.
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
And then at the last minute, realize what a dumb idea
he says this all the time. That's like that's thinking rationally.
So at the last minute,
the person that you love,
no, Joe, cut it out.
The person that you love, you're watching them drown. You're watching that person die.
At the time, and
what are you going to do?
His friends,
are you going to be like flattered?
But you have a fast, maneuverable thing called a boat that you can turn around and get to him and chuck the rope at him and hook him with the rope and try and pull him up.
Maybe she tried that. It didn't work.
It's a weak link. I think really it's because people watch these kooky videos and these weird, erratic gestures and movements and presume
I literally don't think
around
that I would.
Put the ladder down.
Honestly, think that's my problem. And, okay, well let's just say that she does. Okay, so part of this is that one of them, let's say it's him in the water, he accidentally pulls her overboard. Looks like a very abrupt. What I don't get is why she wouldn't kick the swim ladder over as she's reaching down to pull him up.
Well, no, I mean, trying to pull him up from the well of the boat is asinine anyway. Why would she would kick the ladder down, climb down to the swim platform, and grab him from there?
I'm sitting here Googling. This is a really big boat, you guys. You're like saying as if it's just like right there. She could just. Well, no, I was just the name sounded familiar.
This boat has two couches.
It's fine, but how long are they? He died in 2000. But how long are they?
Okay, it's probably the size of my couch, which is like a 6 or 7 foot couch. They're small couches with seats on the end. And then, I mean, if you look at the schematic of these boats, half of it is the well.
You're welcome. My Googling during the show pays off finally. I'm not saying 100 yards, but I'm also saying you missed the thing and he's pulling you over. It's not like it's right there and you have a surprise.
But you pull somebody back onto the boat at the lowest point of the boat, which is the swim platform.
Yes.
No, so if you're at the swim platform, you knock the ladder over saying, hey, dummy, climb up the swim ladder.
But so what if he falls overboard and grabs onto stability and you both go over? You can't just kick the ladder.
But I don't think that he could have reached her from the water, from the well. Claimed we're going down rabbit hole before the we have gone so far down the rabbit hole into the we're so far off the track.
The bottom line is there are a lot of
the story, and that's by specifically what they said they did.
Yeah, and
the person that claimed credit for the Max. So let's move to a completely, totally different. That they were in a TV studio and no one else was around, and they did it themselves. The actual theory is that it is a angry client, is that AKA or angry defendant would be the right way to put it, AKA the caliber of them
in Detroit.
It's vastly superior. Especially in the he was a prosecutor. What is available to the general? According to some people, it's entirely possible that he was prosecuting somebody and didn't appreciate him prosecuting them, and they figured out where Chuck was, and they followed and unfortunately, because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, Lana out onto the water. They figured out where their boat was. The next problem in there, threw her overboard
after making her strip.
After making her strip, and then took him to his torture party.
Why it gotta be him?
So there's no way it was done. She wasn't.
We don't know what she did.
TV studio. She worked for the city of Detroit. The other problem is I don't believe I'm not even.
The city of Detroit prosecutes a lot of people,
but she's not. And a Max Headroom mask and a rubber finger working for the city of Detroit. I get the feeling that it was more. It doesn't sound like something that's at the Home Shopping Network, and I don't know why that's in there. I'm just gonna kind of leave that alone. You can argue that it's Lana's fault. The SNL studio, I can see. The point of the matter is
somebody, although I guess not in the studio, they got it.
Is asinine.
Oh yeah, it's bad, right?
Because it is hard enough to track somebody down on land, let alone that would out on the water by security, speed along and above. So back to your question,
and also like get a hold of them.
Yeah,
right. Frankly, if Chuck sees
that.
Okay,
Defendant
yeah, there's a
number
giant
5
problem
over
because
there
Max
on a
goes
boat
from
going,
jumping
"Pull
around and
over, I gotta
screaming
get
with
on
his
your
head
ship."
in the
He's
air.
obviously not going to be
And
like,
a
"Yeah, okay,
direct cut.
sure."
Hey, I totally recognize that dude. Yeah,
Okay, he's a good guy.
I tried to send him away for 5 years. Let's let him on board and give him a shot of vodka.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Never mind that. That doesn't work. So
there.
I really feel like
no
that
way
one
that could have
doesn't
been done
have
because
any
it happened.
basis.
No.
Like other than it
Yeah.
sounds,
Yeah.
because that's impossible.
Yeah, and the second person who was obviously
finally,
rotating
Lois
the
Camp
boat
had
back
that
and forth.
She told them
And then, you know, sometimes the cat stops rotating.
It does.
So he's now impersonating a woman with a fly swatter.
that didn't settle
He or
with
she
Kim McKelvey.
Yeah.
is
Whoever,
dressed up.
yeah.
Yes, whether it is or is not a woman, we don't know. We don't even know if the person playing Max Headroom is a man or not. We're just that's just a kind of a supposition based on the mask.
Yeah. Well, and the size. Maybe.
This kind of stuff.
The-
I think it's a reasonable thing.
It's a
to assume.
reasonable presumption.
But it
By the
could
way,
be wrong.
I mentioned
Very
he was about 69.
It could very well.
He was on the loading dock. at the
Okay,
rear
so
of the store.
I'm
Kim McKelvey
completely
drove
discounting the
got out with a
4chan
shotgun,
claim
shot
Yeah.
of responsibility that came
So
through.
survived.
Well, the other thing about the other problem I have with the
George
George
Chancellor
is he said it was in the TV studio, and then he didn't say it was live.
Also, the local
we're talking
minister
two
fell out
different
of
studios
favor
here,
with
and
him.
two different
The
radio
minister went and
stations,
saw
right?
Bob
Right.
Bonecamp in the
Yeah, so
hospital.
he somehow managed to
and
get
also
them
went to
alone
see
in the
Bonecamp
studio,
to,
just to
give
give
her
a
a little support.
Or somehow interrupted
About
both signals.
this.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly the thing. Okay, is that you would think that if somebody was investigating this and they went, oh, you know what's funny? WGN and WTTW, their studios are close together and their transmitters are close together. And funny thing is, there's another studio directly in between them. Maybe we should check that, but that's not the case. As far as I can tell, there wasn't another TV studio between the pair of them. So again, how would that person have overridden the signal?
Yeah, and then the next problem.
Meantime, his lawyer kept
they
getting
say he does it
trouble.
like WGN.
So McElroy had lots
earlier
and
in
lots
the
of
evening,
months.
threatened Bo,
And between
that and 11
everybody else. He
o'clock.
would sit in the D&G Tavern talking
You're going to be showing about killing you to find out what the hell happened outside the earlier.
They did. Actually, that's the thing. Is the studios, the first studio, WGN, they knew they'd been hacked because by switching channels, they were done. I believe it was WTTW. They were positive it was an inside job, and they freaked out,
4 days after that,
and they
McElroy was in the D&G
combed
Tavern.
the
When he walked
building,
in,
presuming that somebody had
rifle
gone
with a
through
bayonet on it
and
handed it to
switched
Kim.
the feed
That's,
internally
at this point,
rather
Kim
than
actually was not
overpowering the
supposed to be in
signal.
possession of a gun because the
Which
process is,
I think they kind of wasted valuable time in doing that
Yeah.
because they could have been trying to figure out where it had happened. But yeah, they were convinced that it was an inside job. But there seems to be
a
no
local farmer named Pete Ward.
There's nothing that we can say, a videotape or a beta cassette tape. If you don't know what a beta cassette tape is, look it up.
It's on Wiki.
It's on Wiki.
Google it.
Google it. A beta or a VHS tape was not found anywhere. You know, that smoking tape wasn't there.
Yeah.
Okay, I mentioned already.
Next theory?
Next theory, which I know Devin likes this one because Devin actually led me down the path to find
I
it,
did.
which I'm really glad you did because
Yeah. It's a cool story at the very least.
It's a very fun one
Yeah.
too. The story first came out actually on Reddit, so we went from 4chan to Reddit, which Devin obviously says Reddit's more reliable.
It's a step up.
And a guy who we eventually find out his name is Bowie Pogue. He posted his theory of what was going on, and here's his story. He says that he met a group of guys in the late 80s that were older than he was. It sounds like he was a high school kid at the time.
Yeah.
I seem to recall in one version of the story he was like 13 or something like that.
I think there's only one version of this story that I've ever
The
seen.
Reddit version. And I think it's junior high to high school. He's kind of
he's
in that
pretty young.
weird teenage adolescent
And I don't remember how he met these.
weird way. Well,
I
he's
think
into
they were-
to BBSs and stuff like that, and he seems to have met people through that sphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, hacker
but-
type people and stuff like that.
It was kind of a weird nerd scene. It was a new scene.
Just a weird nerd.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
now that's okay. Really threw me off my game. But somehow he befriended a couple of guys in a group that were older than he was, and they let him hang out. And the two particular people of interest in this story, Pogue refers to them as J and K.
Yep.
He's protecting their identities. He doesn't want to disclose who they are because he doesn't know this for sure. And we'll get into some of it later on. But according to him, Jay was slightly autistic, or he might have had Asperger's. It's unclear, and he doesn't even seem to be positive of the distinction in his description, so I don't want to draw guesses.
Yeah, we have the only thing we have is that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The way he describes him, he's got a sort of strange effect.
He does.
Yeah.
He's got a strange effect. That's
and
a great way to put it.
And that doesn't necessarily mean he did have any kind of... He could have just been like a weird dude.
Yeah.
Could have just had a personality disorder.
Yeah.
But he did have a strange sense of humor, and the guy that is referred to as K was his brother, and K helped take care of J.
Yeah,
I don't think we're going to post the link to this on the website, are we? To the Reddit thread? Because if not, I was just going to say, if you're interested, like, message us and I'll make sure we send it, because it's worth a read.
If you Google Max Headroom broadcast interruption, one of the first links that comes up is the Reddit thread.
Okay.
So people can find it that way.
Check
I
it.
don't know if it'll be one of the ones that we put up, because it's in a number of the other links that we've got.
Yeah, that's fair.
But the thread is super easy to find.
Yeah.
Devin told me about it. I went home. I just put in that search term, and I kid you not, it was the third one that came up on the search.
If you're on Reddit, message us, then we'll send it to you.
Okay.
Well.
Do that. On the day of the interruption, he hung out with these guys, the same group of older guys. And in the course of their conversation, and again, this is a truncated version of his story, they mentioned in conversation that something big was going to happen that night. And when he eventually asked them what they were talking about, he told them, well, watch Channel 11 tonight. That was the same night as the broadcast interruption.
Oh, November 22nd, 1987?
Exactly.
Around there. You were 5 months old.
Yeah. On that day exactly.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Sort of around there. Yeah.
Okay, well, Poe goes on to describe, and this is part of the compelling evidence that he provides, is he goes on to describe the mannerisms of Jay, which he feels are directly reflective of the behavior of Max in the tapes that we see. He also says that Kay, the brother, had a lot of computer technology available in their apartment, tons of computers, and Jay had the technical knowledge to pull it off. One thing that he does point out is that if it is Jay on the tape, he would have been the right age to know the theme song from Clutch Cargo, which again was a cartoon from the 1960s.
Yeah,
because they were older guys. They weren't late teenagers. They were adults.
Yeah, and Jay was supposedly like in his early 30s even. He was like a lot older.
He was much older,
He was much older than his brother Kay.
Yeah.
Right, so if we're looking at 1987, we're talking, if he was born in 60, we're talking a 30-something-year-old guy.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, some shows they end and they go into syndication and they get rerun endlessly on some of the secondary channels. I don't know if Clutch Cargo. Well, there were a lot of shows, like Star Trek, for example, got rerun endlessly on local stations. So, but Clutch Cargo, frankly, even though I was alive in the 60s, I don't remember it at all. So
I don't know.
And it doesn't strike me as something that wound up in reruns. And, of course, back in the 80s, we didn't have, like, Hulu and Netflix and stuff like that.
You would have had to see it on TV.
You would have probably had to see it, yeah.
Or have parents who owned VHSs of it or something.
And that's actually something that we didn't talk about. The reason that people have this is that a lot of people had VHS, and they liked Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So all these people in Chicago were recording the Doctor Who episode So that's the only reason that the broadcast interruption survived.
I would say that's also the reason that one is so much more prevalent on the internet than the news one, because who tapes the news? But you tape Doctor Who.
I've only seen one copy of it, and it's obvious it's the same one, starts at the same place, ends at the same place, but there are multiple versions of the Doctor Who, so there's a lot of people. That's the reason you're absolutely right that we still know about it. But we're not done with Pogue's story.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about Pogue.
Like I said, he has said very openly and adamantly in his Reddit post that he doesn't want to disclose who these guys are.
Yeah.
He has tried to get in contact with them, and they are non-communicative with him.
Non-communicative?
Thank you. I really don't know how to say that word.
Yeah.
They will not talk to him, and so he's left it at that, and he won't push anymore. There's a great Motherboard article which I know we will put up, and that person has also agreed to not try to pursue it anymore. He actually used Poe as his source, or Pogue, not Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, Edgar Allan Pogue.
So we don't know who it is. And on a related note, Pogue also denies vehemently that he is the person who did the interruption.
Right, it's that he knows the people who did it.
Yeah, and we see this, and I'm glad that he's smart enough to say this, is we see people all the time, oh, I know who did it, to stir up a lot of interest in the story when really they're the one who did it and they're getting some self-gratification out of it. So I lend him a little bit of credit for, in his initial thing, saying, I didn't do this, so stop asking me if I did it.
I think, the reason I pointed you to this thread was because I thought his story was actually very compelling. I didn't have a whole lot of problems with it. I found it very believable.
I did too. I'm not sure that it's really dispositive, but
Yeah, I don't know.
It's believable.
At the very least, it is very believable.
Yeah.
I think he's got his facts in a row, and I think the way he tells it is very honest, and I think the way that he has continued to respond to it seems very honest as well. The fact that he says, I don't want you to know who these people are. I just want you to know that I think I know, I want to tell the story of the people behind it, and he sticks to his guns about that, and I think, I don't know.
I like the story. I will be honest. I think I said this before, is that it's all circumstantial.
Oh, absolutely. It's all anecdotal.
That's my hardest part.
Absolutely it is.
That is the one thing that sticks in my craw the whole way through his version of events it's his version of events. I got nothing to back it up with. So I like it. I agree with you. I like it. But
in fairness, there's no solid evidence pointing towards literally anybody.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
Oh, you wouldn't say that.
I wouldn't.
Oh, okay, Mr. Know-It-All says stuff, posting this show. What you found?
Well, if you've been old enough to watch Max Headroom. No, I'm kidding. Now, the last theory that I've got, which this is the one that I actually think is the best one based on what we have available to us, is that it was a disgruntled employee or ex-employee. And before you wig out on me, bear with me through this. Okay. Could have been an inside job. So the station might have been correct in looking around internally for who the guy was. But it might not have been a guy actually in the studio, because if you think about it, whoever pulled this off had to have a lot of working knowledge of how the TV stations worked, and who else has the better information than the people that work in the studio or the engineers that work at the station. So if some dude is peeved at his boss or gets fired and wants to poke him in the eye, this is an easy way to do it, and they would have the knowledge on how to do it. Think about this. Wait. I see that look, but bear with me. Do you remember all those lines that we read of what Max said? The world's greatest nerds.
Yeah.
And talking about Chuck Swirsky and stuff like that. who is the network that keeps getting ripped on in all of the lines that Max says?
Yeah, well, WGN.
WGN. Well, why did Max go to WTTW? Because WGN shut him down and locked him out, and he only had the opportunity to make it happen at WTTW. Well, if Max was angry at all TV stations or all Chicago stations, I would think that there would be more rips on more characters that were known in the broadcast industry there. But instead, the only people and the only establishments that get directly ripped on are WGN
and
its employees. Coke is because it's, I think, honestly, it's a direct relation to the Max Headroom character doing the new Coke commercial.
So he does the Pepsi thing just for fun.
For fun, but all of the dialogue is aimed mostly at screwing with them, which makes me think that it had to be some kind of employee, somebody that knew the system and knew all of that internal information. I mean, WGN. I'm sorry, who knew that stood for World's Greatest Newspaper? Probably only people that worked there, because it was probably splattered all over the walls on motivational posters and crap like that. So that's why I personally, I don't have any evidence, but there's not a lot of evidence here to start with. But that's why I lean that direction mostly.
When you think about it, that at least gives a motive, because otherwise, what exactly is the motive for doing this besides just being a